What's up, Packers fans? Aaron Nagler here with Camille Davis, and Carry the G in MKE is back after a very disappointing, let's say forgettable. Did the Packers play on Monday night, Camille? I don't even remember. I've moved on. I'm ready for the Tampa game. That's all I know.
All I know is that I had the Bucs were playing at the same time as the Packers, and I
Saw
had
that.
the Bucs on the big TV because I had to do a podcast right after that game, and I had the Packers on the small screen. But luckily, Giannis takes so long to shoot his free throws. I was able to watch a lot of the Packers game during
Perfect.
the Bucs game. No, jokes aside, though, yeah, it was a disappointing game, and it was one of those games coming into it where I knew it could be disappointing because
Right.
of the big wins that we just had against the Lions, against the Chiefs, and now you have expectations. What does it look like when you're favored and you're expected to win against a team that hasn't been that great so far? And we saw what happened.
Yeah, we did. And I do think, it's a bit of a crash back to earth for a team that was flying a little high, right? I do think it kind of plays exactly into what we've heard from Matt LaFleur, not only this year, but kind of throughout his tenure in Green Bay, where you can get humbled quick in the National Football League. And when people start talking playoffs and playoff seeding and, oh, they could go on this run, it's like you could also lose to the Giants, which they did in spectacular fashion. And that's the thing, that it's the manner in which, for me, like if that was a hard fought game where it comes down to the other team just happening to make a play, one more play than you did, that's easy to accept, right? I like, it's not, doesn't make it suck less that you lost, but I understand that. I can live with that. But as a fan watching just mistake after mistake after mistake and really no correction throughout almost the entirety of that game until right up to the end, I thought Jordan Love obviously made some plays at the end to pull them ahead. But of course, then Joe Barry took over. But it's like throughout that game, it just felt like a team that wasn't focused and seemed to be looking past that, like they could just show up and beat the Giants.
That's the exact vibe that I got as well, where they come in the game, and as soon as I saw like the first offensive possession, I'm just like, little inaccurate here, rushing a
Yeah.
little bit here. Like it's not looking great. Like let's settle down and get into the game. And it didn't seem like the offense really settled down until the second half. Like that second quarter stretch where Jordan Love had the fumble, and then the next possession it's
Oh,
an interception. Like that's brutal. This is a bad Giants defense, right? And I say that with no disrespect, and I'm not saying that to be like,
no, I hear you.
you know what I mean?
You're
But
not
like
you're not telling lies. Yeah,
they were
no,
bottom third in
absolutely.
the league and a wide array of stats that you can point to say this is not a good defense. But one thing their defense does well, they take the ball away. They're pretty good at that. And we saw it over the last few weeks before they even played the Packers. We saw the
Yeah.
6 turnover night they had against the Washington Commanders a couple weeks ago as well. Like they had 3
Yep.
straight weeks coming into this Packers game of forcing multiple turnovers, and that trend continued against the Packers. It was just you can't do that.
You can't, and it's interesting because you look at Jordan Love and all the praise he was rightfully getting coming off of the performances against the Lions and the Chiefs, and even before that, like the Chargers, etc. Certainly a young man who's shown us now. I don't even think the ceiling yet. I think he's
Mhm.
still obviously developing and growing, but you've seen some of the top end stuff that he can do. To see him come out of the gate so off, right? And so kind of, and I don't think, it's anything other than wasn't his night, It was funny kind of watching some of the reactions though, because the Jordan Love haters were back, ladies and
Oh
gentlemen.
yeah.
They were out in force. And it's so funny to me because I know a lot of them are young. People watching the Packers are very young and don't remember, but Brett Favre was almost the exact same way when he was like a second year starter in Green Bay. Almost every game he would come out and sail balls high, and he always kind of took a quarter and a half to kind of get into a rhythm. That's exactly what I saw on Monday night. And for Brett, it always took kind of getting hit or taking like a big pop, from somebody, some linebacker or whatever, and that would kind of focus him. I don't know if I ever saw a moment where Jordan kind of got into focus, but you certainly saw him improve as the game went
Mhm.
on. And like I said, like especially those last couple throws when they absolutely needed a score, that's something we weren't seeing earlier this season. As far as the chips are down, you need your quarterback to deliver. He absolutely did. To me, that's progress, and this is all part of the ups and downs of a young quarterback, which is to be expected. I just hate how every throw or every game is like a referendum on where Jordan Love is. It's like, just let him play, let him grow, because this is what it looks like.
It's a long season, right? And I understand we have a week in between games most of the time here. The Packers on a short week this week, but you have a week. So you're spending a week trying to figure things out. Like everything always looks different in retrospect. Like when we take a look at this team at the end of the season and we're able to see the complete picture, it's going to look different than how we might be feeling on a week to week basis, seeing what we're seeing. So when I'm watching the games, what I'm trying to do is just see progress or not. If it's not progress, just trying to chart it and trying to keep that in mind that it's a long season. Let's see if when you're put in the same positions, if you respond differently the next time. And this was a situation against the Giants where it's like all season. Well, I shouldn't say all season, but we went through that big losing streak. You're 2-5, where it's like, what is this team going to be? Everybody was writing the Packers off for dead at that point, and now look, they're 6-7. They're right now 7th seed in the NFC, holding that wild card spot.
Absolutely
Again,
crazy.
those expectations change. So when I'm watching Jordan Love, like a game like we saw against the Giants, for me, it's like, okay, you started off poor. Are you going to be able to make some throws to get this team back in the game eventually? And that's what we saw down the stretch here, where it's like, it was not a good game. It was not. But
No.
he didn't give up at any point with that. He remained poised. He kept that aspect about him that we've seen throughout the season, whether that's been in wins or losses or whatever. Jordan Love just always kind of seems to be steady, very even keeled with that. And that demeanor with him is what I was watching. Like, okay, now you're on the road in New York. You're expected to win here. Can you do something while people are watching you with this perspective of you? And for him to come through with that touchdown to Heath at the end there, you're like, okay, that's something. Like, and I'm not saying like that erases everything else that you saw,
Right.
but it's a trait that I was looking to see if he could do it. And I was pleased to see him be able to do something positive on a rough night.
A very rough night. Speaking of rough, I mean, the play that kills me is like the interception, man, bad throw, bad eyes. Like he's late to it. Like, the wide receiver got held fine. Like, I don't think it materially affected the play though. It's still a bad decision by the quarterback, right? But that happens. I understand that. Like, young quarterback, gonna happen. Like, defense got you. All right, move on. The one that kills me is the fumble.
Yeah.
Because for two reasons, right? One, it's pretty clear. If you just go outside, man, you got the edge. Like, I understand you're worried about the guy disengaging and maybe running you down, but just get out. Get outside. That's where it's designed to go. Just run the play, right? And then the second thing is, okay, so he does decide to cut it back up inside. Wish he hadn't, but he does. And it feels like that mentality that we heard about from him at the podium after the Chicago game, where he said, I told my agent I'm going to run somebody over. We've seen that now throughout the season, where he does not shy away from contact, and he does seem to want to seek it out. He does seem to want to like deliver a blow to a defender, like, which is great. Okay, we went through talking about Favre comparisons. The whole Favre career, it was like he plays like a linebacker. He wants to be as tough as the defense, and that's fine. But you got to understand, you are the guy with the ball, and it is the most important thing in the game. You can't have that mentality and then cough it up. Like, I'm fine if you have, I want to run somebody over as your kind of spine, right? As your way of working. Okay, great. That's your, I guess, your makeup. Okay, but you got to understand that ball is more precious than anything else on that field. And to give it up there on a play that should have been just an easy first down, that kills you. And that's 100% like circled. He's got to learn from that. Like, of all the things that happened on Monday night, that's for me, the number one. You got to learn from that moment.
You really do. And I do want to ask you this too about Jordan Love and thinking about the performance, because you mentioned him tucking away, having that mentality, looking to run. What was interesting on the flip side is watching Tommy DeVito, who after his performance, I'm like, is he like Tommy, Colin, Michael Kaepernick? Like, what is happening with Tommy
the NFC
DeVito?
Offensive Player of the Week is what he is.
Like,
well done, Joe Barry. Well done.
But it was interesting seeing, like, if he feels pressured, he has no qualms about just taking off. Like, he's just going to take off. And that's one thing with Jordan Love, where I respect that he wants to get the throw off. He doesn't want to necessarily scramble all the time. But do you see more opportunities for Jordan to be able to use his legs in a way that could, I mean, not carry the offense, but just make some plays when things are looking a little dead at times?
I think so. The problem is like, if you go back and you look, a lot of the times on Monday night, like, he's looking at the rush for the first time all year, really, where his eyes are dropping almost not instantly after the snap, but especially as the game went on, New York was getting pressure, and he didn't really have a lot of lanes to step up into and escape, right?
Like Tommy,
That
yeah.
was what was so frustrating with the Packers defense and DeVito is that, okay, fine, you maybe get some pressure. One guy gets pressure, but there were multiple opportunities to DeVito to just step up and take off. Like the Giants were way more disciplined in how they rushed the quarterback than the Packers were. The Packers kept just blowing things wide open for him, making it quite easy for him to take what was there as far as, using his legs. I think, yeah, there are probably opportunities for Jordan to do that a little bit more. But like you said, I appreciate that he's keeping his eyes downfield and wants to make
Mhm.
a play from the pocket because ultimately, what have we talked about so much this season as far as Jordan Love and his progression? I mean, it's a developmental season. It's the season you figure out, is he your guy? I think we're pretty close, or the Packers are probably pretty close to deciding, yeah, I think they'll probably extend him this offseason. And you want him long term to be playing from the pocket. And
Mhm.
so if his default is I'm going to make a play with my arm rather than my legs, and he misses an opportunity or two to make a play with his legs, I don't have a problem with it. Like, I would be fascinated to sit in a room with him and Tom Clements and see if Tom is saying, like, yeah, if you see this lane, go take it. Like, don't worry about wanting to throw from the pocket or whatever. But I do think long term, that's best for him as a quarterback. That's best for him to get into that habit rather than saving himself with his legs.
Yeah.
Uh, in lieu of, okay, I'm going to stick with my progressions. I'm going to make sure that I've exhausted every possibility when it comes to being able to throw the ball. That's just one man's take, one man with a microphone, but that's where I sit. I mean, you long term, so the whole year is about is kind of setting your foundation, especially on offense. Yeah, I prefer him, and I like that he's throwing
Yeah.
from the pocket, and that's his first instinct.
Yeah, I feel you on that one. I was just really curious about it because I'm just watching the game and I'm like, like you mentioned, it wasn't as clear of lanes for Love, but just thinking about
Yeah,
the season as a whole, where I'm like, there are times where I'm like, Love, like you can take this one with your legs right now, but I
yeah,
definitely feel you on that point about what it's really about is figuring out his pocket presence if he can quarterback this team, and I think that added razzle dazzle of the threat of the legs, it just helps a bit with the quarterback position. I mean, we even saw that with young Aaron Rodgers, where
yeah.
so he's going to bail out sometimes, and it's going to lead to positive yardage. So I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a ongoing education for Jordan, and I don't doubt for a moment that if there's an obvious situation where he can do so, he probably will. And it's funny enough, he did earlier this year, much to my chagrin, when he had Christian Watson blazing wide open on a shallow cross underneath, and I was like, just hit Watson, and he literally just ran because it's parted. I think it was against the Chargers, but I can't remember for sure. But there was a lane and he just took off. He got the first down. This is a perfect point. I'm like, just run the offense. Like there's a guy
Yeah,
right there
yeah,
for designed for you to throw it to. But so yeah, it's a young quarterback, right? And he's gonna pick his spot, so to speak. And I'm sure as he develops and as he kind of matures, he'll figure out, how best to utilize those gifts. Because
yeah,
he's a special talent. There's zero doubt about that. And the more he plays, the more comfortable he'll get with that kind of decision making, especially the split second nature of it. Because that's the
right.
other thing. You're right. This happens so fucking quick.
So
It's
quick.
real easy for us sitting on our couches to go, well, there's a lane right there. We're like, yeah, but you didn't see the 300-pounder like right next to him that was like trying to take his head off and blah blah blah. Speaking of 300-pounders, I did want to like flip the script here a little bit and talk about the Packers defense and
Do we
specifically
have to?
the defensive line. Yeah, because it was such a
Oh, man.
no-show. This is the defensive front for the Packers in this game is the one place where I pause when someone says, "Oh, it's pretty clear the Packers like overlook the Giants." Because usually I'm like, they're paid professionals. I think that's a very media-driven thing. Like, I don't think teams actually do that. I don't think players sit there and go, "Oh, we got this, no problem." I just don't think that's most players or teams' mentality. But damn it, if it didn't look that way, looking at the Packers defensive front. And I think individually, guys had good plays. Some guys played better than others. But man, as a unit, the cohesiveness, the
Yeah,
discipline that we saw against the Lions, especially, but also against the Chiefs, completely disappeared. I mean, whether it was Rashawn Gary just flying around the edge and leaving the lanes we're talking about for DeVito to just take off, whether it's Wyatt making great initial pressure, or Slayton. Both of them had plays where they make great initial first steps, great initial pressure, can't close the deal, right? And whenever anybody seemed to get pressure on their own, nobody else was there to help out. Way too many times we saw edge pressure and then nothing from the interior guys, so DeVito could just simply step up. It was just the poorest performance that we've seen, I don't want to say all year, but it certainly harkened back to some real difficult moments for this team on defense, and it all started up front.
It was a very poor performance, especially when you take into account the fact that the Giants had allowed the highest sack rate in the NFL. Like, they allowed
Yeah.
69 sacks heading into that game, which was, I believe, 11 more than
Yeah,
second
the
place.
next team had 58.
Yeah, so you're sitting here and you're thinking like, wow, okay, the Packers pass rush has been heating up the last few games. I can't wait
Yep.
to see what they do against this offensive line with this backup quarterback in the game. And the fact that they weren't able to get not a sack, not a half, not a quarter, not a nothing. No
Two, what did
sacks,
they get? 2 quarterback hits? I think 2 hits
2
all
hits
night. 2 pressures,
the
sorry.
whole night against, again, a Giants offensive line that has been porous throughout the year. And you've already highlighted a lot of reasons why that was. Like, the unit wasn't playing together cohesively. It was a lot of guys winning individually, but other guys weren't following their proper assignments. And you saw it with the lanes that kept opening up for Tommy over and over and over. And it was infuriating because with this Giants team as well, if you can stop the run, you're gonna force DeVito to beat you with his arm. And for most of the game, they did all right against Barkley. Like, they did all right.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was averaging 1.3 yards per carry prior to the second to last drive. Like, up until, like, deep into the fourth quarter, they had completely limited him. The problem, of course, was, and we saw reporting around this now yesterday, well, that's what opened up DeVito on the read option, because they on the keepers, because they said, okay, look, these ends are just crashing down. They're so focused on Barkley. They're leaving the edge wide open. And which is okay. So they get you once. I understand it. But the fact that they kept getting them, I'm like, do we adjust? Like, I get the other team's allowed to adjust, but we're allowed to adjust to their adjustment. Is anybody aware of this? Like, that's the frustrating part.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it. And because of that, now we gave up 200 plus yards again on the ground to another team. That's what, the fourth time this
Fourth
season.
one this year. Yep.
Like, it's tough to win a game when you're giving up 200 yards on the ground, especially when you want to try to take advantage again of a backup quarterback's arm. It reminds me of that Atlanta game where it's like, let's make
Exactly
Riddler beat us, and we couldn't
Yep.
do that.
Nope. Couldn't do it at all. And that's the funny thing. It's like we bemoan the lack of pressure and the lack of sacks, which was very real, right? But then there were so many times where DeVito goes back to pass and his first option's available. I mean, they did a lot of like running off coverage and then throwing something underneath, which makes sense, especially against the Packers scheme, which tries to keep everything in front of it, And that's what blows my mind every time we play one of these young quarterbacks. Barry is going to stick with his plan, scheme, design, whatever, come hell or high water. It doesn't matter if it's Patrick Mahomes or Tommy DeVito. He's going to play the same style of defense, which is fine if you're playing a team that likes to push it down the field or wants to throw like, deep 20-yard outs or what have you. And it's designed to stop that kind of thing. But no one's running that with these young quarterbacks. They're going to dink and dunk. They're going to like try and run the ball, obviously, but we don't change the approach at all. And that, to me, it's an absolute condemnation of Joe Barry that, Kenny Pickett's of the world, that you mentioned, Desmond Ritter's of the world, the Tommy DeVito's of the world are carving you up because you just do not change your approach in any, significant way. It's embarrassing. It's downright embarrassing that these like really lesser quarterbacks are able to take advantage of the Packers pretty much every game.
Especially when it's situational, right? Like, we look at the end of this game.
Oh my God. We are the worst situational defense. I mean, we are inept situationally on defense. No question.
I just couldn't believe we go up by 1 point. 1 point, meaning.
And we're acting like we're up by 7.
Yes, meaning a field goal can beat you. Why are we playing off in this last drive when they just need to get into field goal range? Like, that was the part where I was like, does he know that we're only up by 1?
Does he know the score? I mean, anything's possible, right? It's Joe Barry. Anything is possible.
I just really couldn't believe that. And to hear Matt LaFleur after the game, or I think it might have been after or Monday, I can't remember which day.
It was after the game, yeah.
He's just like, we gave up too many chunk plays. Like we
Yep.
lost our leverage, and we can't do that. Like you can't do that in critical situations. And we did that. And I wasn't sure in the clarifying comments that came the day after, it's like, is that a Joe Barry problem where he was putting them in this position, or were the players supposed to be playing?
Look, here's the thing. Like, even if it is a Joe Barry problem, it's a Matt LaFleur problem. Because this
That's a
goes back
fact.
to Mike Pettin. You know what I
That's
mean?
a
Like, this
fact.
is not a new thing in Green Bay under Matt.
Aaron, preach.
Like we hear Matt talk about this all the time. Like, oh well, we got to fix that, or well, I want these guys to be a little bit more aggressive. Well, Matt, you are fucking how many years into this? You have been in town since 2019, and this has been a problem for both your coordinators, which means it's been a problem for you. It is Matt LaFleur's responsibility to set what expectation there is, play style, aggressiveness, whatever, on the defensive side of the ball. He's an offensive coach, but he's the head coach. I'm so over it. I'm so over seeing the same shit that cost us games too, by the way. This isn't just like, oh, it's kind of frustrating. No, it's costing you games, but nothing changes. That blows my mind.
And you only get 17 games. So like you got
and you're like tossing like 3 or 4 of them a year out the window because of your complete lack of situational awareness on defense.
Yep. And it bears the question. Like, we've had the conversation so far this season, and it's been one that's been had by many of people when during the Packers winning streak, where it's like, Joe Barry's job might be safe. And to your point, it's like, even if it's not safe, whoever he brings in next is going to be his third coordinator now if he does make a change. Will we actually see some change? Because we thought we were going to see some change as well with our special teams. But I mean, that unit was so bad that once Bisaccia got in, anything good was going to look great because we had been such a poor unit. And there are still miscues. Like, this Giants game was bad in all 3 phases. And I want to be clear about that. It was bad in all 3 phases. And yet and still, they had a chance to be able to get a win and learn through the miscues, the problems, and a victory. But instead, it's an L. And it might not have been if 1 or 2 things, 4, 5, 6 different things are different. But I mean, you also look at special teams and you think of the Nixon fumble, the muff. You think about the missed field goal from Anders Carlson in a game where you lost by 2. Like, it was complimentary football in the sense that every phase was poor.
Absolutely. They all complimented each other by being the exact same style of dog shit. That's right. Yep. That about sums it up. I will say, as frustrating a loss as it was, there's still time for this team to bounce back. And I do expect we will see a very different looking team against the Buccaneers. I'm not sitting here saying they're going to roll or anything like that, but I do think there's a decent chance, especially, look, here's the other thing. They got to get healthy. Like, they have so much talent sitting on the sideline in these games. I mean, especially on Monday night. Christian Watson was dearly missed. There's zero doubt about that. I mean, I don't think it's telling tales out of school to say the offense looks completely different when he's in there. I mean, that Chiefs game, the Lions game, what's the common denominator on offense? Oh, Christian Watson scoring touchdowns. Christian Watson's causing matchup problems. You know, you take him off the field. Now Matt LaFleur feels necessary to run a million Jaden Reed end arounds. I mean, it's just, well, I know people are having fun with that, but it's like, he's trying to get the ball in his playmaker's hands. Right. Like, I don't like, however you want to do it. Okay, I get it. Probably went to the well once too often, but I kind of understand it. But they got to get healthy. Aaron Jones, Christian Watson, you get them back on the field, the offense probably looks a lot different. But yeah, I do think they're the play style, just the lack, hopefully, of sloppiness will kind of shine against the Bucs, because I think, to a man, they're probably pretty damn embarrassed to go on national television and put that out there for the world to see.
Absolutely. And again, it's fine to be frustrated. As people can hear, we were frustrated watching the game. Like, it happens. You're a fan of the team. You're you're living and dying by every single play. It's fine to be frustrated, but let's try to keep perspective as well about what this season is, the position the team is in, because they still do control their own destiny right here. Like, if the playoffs is something that you, as whoever's hearing my voice, if you are into that, if you're like, I want a playoff game for this Packers team, listen, they're still in control. Like, if they win out, they're in. Even if they go 3-1, depending on who they lose to, they have a high likelihood of making the playoffs. For me, Playoffs, again, I said it. I thought they could be a wild card team. I predicted they'd be a wild card team, but that was more just kind of like the NFC is bad. That's more so what
And
it was
that's the
around.
thing. The NFC is bad, and that's the high end for the Packers, right? Like that's
Exactly.
okay. That's a really good result for this Packers team, no doubt.
Yeah, and that's a I don't want to say it's a win for the season, but like this is
I
developmental
kind of
year.
a win for the
Like
season. Yeah, no, I think so.
that would be a successful season in my book. If the Packers make the playoffs in their first year with Jordan Love at the helm, like that's a successful season. Whatever
I
happens
mean,
thereafter is what it
you
is.
know what's going to happen. There's going to be war in the Packers Twitter streets about the fact that Jordan Love's team made the playoffs his first year as a
Oh
starter, and
yeah.
Aaron Rodgers' team didn't. That will undoubtedly dominate the offseason on Packers Twitter. I for one look really full. I'm really looking forward to it. More so than that though, the one thing I got to do this year, I don't care about the playoffs, Camille. I don't. I like make the playoffs, great. I'm that wonderful. More football, more Packers football. I'm always
Right.
down for it. But what I need, my Super Bowl, is beating the Bears Week 18. Because man, let me tell you, I cannot handle an offseason where the last thing that happens is the Bears beat the Packers, and then we got to listen to fucking Bears fans again all off season long about Justin Fields and about how they own the North or all this nonsense that they talked all last off season. And obviously none of that came to fruition. And now if they beat the Packers week 18, it's like all off season we got to hear their nonsense. I can't handle that. That's my Super Bowl week 18.
Well, we got to take care of business once we get there,
Mm-hmm.
because one thing about this Bears team is since they got Sweat, like that defense has been playing better.
He's legit. Oh man,
Yes.
he's a problem. Man, he's a problem.
That's
No
going to
doubt.
be a different look for this Packers team in week 18 than what they saw in week 1.
Big time. But first you got to take care of the Bucs. The Bucs, who are no slouch, by the way.
No.
I mean, I'm not sitting here saying Baker Mayfield's like a superstar or anything like that, but he's playing efficient football for them. Their defense, they still got great pieces on that side of the ball. We know that defense came into Lambeau a couple years ago and tore out our hearts. So, yeah, it's going to be a tough one on Sunday, but I do expect a much better performance all around from Green Bay. Hopefully they get a little healthier. Tell the fine folks out there, Camille, where can they find you on these internet streets?
Absolutely. On a Monday through Friday basis, you can catch me on Locked On Bucs, talking all things Milwaukee Bucks. You can find that show on YouTube as well as wherever you get your podcasts. And then once a week, every Wednesday, we drop a new episode of Technical File, TECKNICAL, a weekly podcast where we cover NFL, NBA, and pro wrestling news. So today's episode just dropped as well. So go ahead and check that out.
Awesome. Camille, can't thank you enough. We'll be back next week after hopefully a Packers win to watch this stank of a Giants loss away.
That's the hope.
Camille. That is the hope. Go Pack.